All right. Thank you, Mira. Let me start at the beginning of the history of Air. We basically started 5 years ago, it's 2012, nearly 6 years ago, as a two-man office, one and then two-man, looking into trends of the Silicon Valley, of the Bay Area. We started as a trend research office, and let's say in the last couple of years, as the focus of the home company also changed towards the digital business, also our focus obviously changed. We now much more focused on digital service design, because besides that, knowing what's happening in the future, we now also working towards what like creating these products, what the customer wants. When we talk about digital service design, we're talking about concept ideation, concept creation, rapid prototyping, business modeling, very important, and overall these processes, it's always combined with user testing, because this is really what we are here for. We want to find out what the customer in the future really wants and what he is also willing to pay for.
Jürgen, you were talking about a two-man show, and I actually had the opportunity to meet one of the journalists sitting here from Switzerland, and she was asking me, yes, talking about you, she was asking me, what about women at Audi? And actually, it was a two-man and one-woman show.
That's true, yeah.
Right? So, yes, just to keep that in mind. And actually, our head of the office is sitting right here, so we have a woman leading Audi Innovation Research.
And we are 6 people right now.
Exactly.
So from a 1 to 6 people, you see also the importance of these kind of offices getting much higher.
Yeah, and we are half-half, so 3 women, 3 men. So, okay, having that said, just to make a statement for the women in the world, let's go back to digital services. Mark, question for you. What does it take to be premium in the digital space?
Well, I think we see a number of different things. I think there's sort of inherent things that every good digital company needs to have. We talk a lot about agility, we talk about test and learn and iteration, things like that. I think that's pretty standard now, in terms of at least this part of the world and the influences around it. But premium does require something slightly different. And there are basically 3 key aspects to think about. The first one is, it has to be about customer obsession. The days of just building a product and then they will come, that's long gone. This is now a case where you have to really just not know your customer, but really obsess about every single detail of what's going to be of value to them. And throughout the entire journey, not just where you might necessarily think you have relevance. A good example of that is probably, the ultimate example of that is really Amazon, who sort of turned it into a fine art, I think we could say, in terms of actually how they really go around and offer some very simple sets of data, then enable a whole digital businesses to be built on the back of that. And once you've then got that customer obsession and knowledge, you've then got to translate it into something. And that's where what we see now is that people are moving away from transaction, and they're really moving now into experience. So there's this whole end-to-end process. And I think you see this in a number of different startups. That probably, again, the best one here in the Valley is probably Airbnb. It started as just booking a room for a night. And now as they move into experiences and trips and potentially much further across your whole experience, they're actually taking this to a much broader degree. And what started then is just like one subject, actually now has a much broader audience, much broader relevance. And then as we move beyond experience, one of the key things on premium is actually really starting to think about actually when you deliver it. And this isn't just a great, I'm going to do these things and it's going to be coming in the future, I'm going to talk about the hype and it's going to get there eventually. It's you have to be responsive. I mean, you genuinely have to be super transparent and on demand with what the customers actually want. So again, a really good example there is probably what we see with the ride-sharing services, Uber, Lyft, Audi on demand, where actually, I need a car, I've got a car. And having to wait and make the customer do that, you just lose your customer.
Let's take this on a broader level, and Philipp, you'll be the one to do this.
All right.
Yeah, so we were talking about key factors for success. If we're looking from a trend perspective, which trends do you see in the automotive market that would support this?
I think they're the typical trends that everybody talks about these days, and everybody here in the room will be familiar with them: autonomous connectivity, shared mobility, electrification, obviously. But I think the key here is, and this has been pretty surprising to the mobility industry as such, is with which speed these 4 trends are coming lately, especially over the last few years. And we always say innovation obviously takes time, but actually innovation not only takes time, it's also a function of how much money you put in it. And when you look at the last 5 years, the amount of investments that the mobility space has seen is unbelievable, and much more than anybody has thought it's going to be when we were 5 years, 10 years back. So with over 100 billion having been invested into the ACEs, one of the key things here is a lot of this money is not only from the automakers, but also kind of from the mobility ecosystem, if you will, the tech companies, the private equity companies, all of them. So now it's really about forming the right partnerships, teaming up together to go after these 4 trends. When you think about connectivity, now you ask a customer, is connectivity important to you in a car? Only in the last 2 years it has doubled that number of customers that really want to have a connected car. We from McKinsey would say by 2030, probably 70% of all miles driven can be autonomous level 4 miles. So that's already at least here in the US. So that's dramatic change here. And in terms of electrification, you see all the great models coming into the market right now.
So from a premium perspective, all the brands like in automotive have to somehow address these challenges. If they do all the same, like how can they differentiate themselves?
I think that's important. And besides the points that Mark made around experience and customer excitement and speed, it's for us, it's much more around the ecosystem, not only the hardware of the car. The car itself needs to be great, but it goes far beyond that. Now it's really around the ecosystem that you build around it. Take connectivity, for example. So this is a survey we did with premium customers here in the US, and 41% of the people would switch their car brand for a better connected car. And so there you already see how important the software aspect of things are. And then the ecosystem goes beyond that. If we talk electric vehicles, a lot of the customers today are still skeptical because of driving range and charging infrastructure. Now, if you talk to a lot of people, the people that are considering EVs are a little bit still hesitant when it comes to these 2 factors. Now, if you poll people that have already experienced an electric vehicle, this anxiety almost goes away completely. So while we are still with the first generation of EV buyers, as we get to the second generation, the second time around, people realize that charging infrastructure and charging, drive range isn't as much of a problem as they would have initially thought.
Just on a side note, if you had a chance to have a look at the exhibits, there's actually another innovation hub who presents some stuff. It's actually mobile charging. It's from Denkwerkstatt in Berlin. So if you have the chance to have a look, there is actually what we do about the charging. But let's dive into this what Air is doing. So thank you, Philipp. You were telling all about the trends, but how does it now work with working at Air? What is Audi Research doing? We heard that. But then let's see what you guys have been working together. What is working Air style? And Jürgen, you start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Air style is working also with experts. For us, or let's say for the company, a big value we're bringing on the table is having a great network here in this area. We obviously want to leverage this network because it's always important to get the opinion of the experts out there. And how are you doing that? We're getting, for example, a question from the company, which is, how can we create new experiences for our customers with digital services based on car data? Then obviously we can think about this by ourselves, but it's, I think, much more valuable when we go out there, invite people we're thinking they can help us with this, answering this question. And one of these experts in the past was Mark. And Mark, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the experience.
Sure. So unfortunately, there's lots of experts. It wasn't just me.
And so I see in the picture.
I do appear. I seem to have the same shirt all the time. Sorry. But there was a number of different sessions. This was like at least a 6-month process we went through on this. And we started off with a huge number of experts and frankly a huge number of ideas. It's not like in Silicon Valley there's a lack of ideas. The processor was great because what we were trying to do is take these ideas, turn them into concepts, and then really try and move this into something where actually reality was going to bite, where actually this became a prototype, something we could physically actually test and manifest. So it was, we covered a whole number of different areas. I think what we came down to at the end of it, which was really interesting, was that there is some infrastructural things that have to be done around ecosystem, and then there's lots of really fun ideas you can put on top. And I think to your point earlier, Philipp, there is a huge $1.5 trillion of opportunity of new businesses that are going to come. We were really just trying to get some core compelling use cases to get the whole thing started.
So with these ideas, how do you then actually make it feasible and bring it back to the company? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is you can always just tell them what you want to do, but the best way is really to show them what you want to do. Like I'm talking about the decision makers back home. And so what we did, we took those ideas we developed there and said, okay, how can we actually make them experience these ideas? And we built up a prototype. And when you look at the slide on your television, you see a customer journey which we built up within this prototype. It was a Q7, the Electronic Research Lab in Daumann. They helped us with building this prototype up to really make this experience, livable. So what was it about? It was really about that you could set up an ID with this ID on your phone. You get to the car recognizes you. You get into the car adapts to your personal things you already had in another car, and then based on that you can get different kind of services. And this is what we brought over to Germany, and showed to the board and made sure that our Bay Area perspective, our expert perspective, was taken into account when there was the time to create the Audi ecosystem, which we see nowadays, like with my Audi and all that stuff.
Okay, so now we talked a lot about user research, customer journeys, rapid prototyping. Audi Innovation Research is part of the digital business unit at Audi. So let's talk about business. And before we go into Audi, let's have a broader perspective. And Philipp, I would ask you again. Where do you see profit pools in the digital business, and how can you unlock them?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. There are, when you look at the auto space, obviously the traditional world around selling cars and services and parts, as part of that, is still going to grow quite substantially. And you see a lot of great vehicles coming into the market, as we will see tonight. But there's another part of the mobility ecospace that is actually growing very much as well, which is related to shared economy, shared mobility, connectivity, these type of solutions. All in all, we estimated about 1,500 billion in additional revenues that come into the market. So the question is, out of that, probably 350 billion will be related to connectivity. So the question for the OEMs will be, how do I tap best into this? And when you look at some of the other industries, like the airline industry, for example, they actually started really understanding how do I make revenues with a customer over a longer period of time. They will sell you the airline ticket when you book your trip with your family. But then on the day of the trip, you can do an upgrade, you can order additional food, you can order internet or movies while you're on the plane ride. And taking that thinking also into the car and saying, this is much more than just selling you a car and then I leave you alone. This is around really becoming along the lifetime of the customer. How do I generate revenues with the customer?
So of course, we're thinking about that too, but how it's actually integrated in the whole design thinking process. Jürgen, you want to maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mentioned it already before that within this whole digital service design process, business modeling is obviously a very important part, because besides creating nice experiences, we also have to make sure that we make money in the future. It's obviously our target. So what we are doing here, we created a kind of a process. It's not something we created totally new. It's a lot of companies around this area are doing it like us here. We call it the Audi Innovation Funnel. And what we're doing here, we're really jumping into business modeling pretty early. So during the steps, we're creating small business model. We go out, we test it with users, ask them if they are willing to pay for it, coming back, adapting things, developing them further, and then to a certain point we also let them experience that what we thought about. Then we build up prototypes. For example, we're doing this together with another department, Tech Hub, for example. We have some colleagues sitting here. They're doing more than the software development part. And going along this process, we always seeing if it's a business model that's reliable, and also getting a business case out of it. What does it mean also for us? For us, it's a business model when we can scale it. What does this mean? It means we have to get users on our ecosystem, because without the users, we will not make any money because we need someone who is actually using our services and buying into them. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was a lot like the theoretical perspective. You brought one example where you guys actually worked on one certain service, and I would say let's talk about this a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, this was fun. That was pretty fun. It was one of the services we got out of this 3-month process, and we call it nowadays My Memories. At this time, it was just like a service which gives you the possibility to create experiences and give you the possibility to relive these experiences. And I mean, what we did, we went out to a racetrack, we got a car, we drove around. We tried, first of all, to do videos by ourselves with the phone. We realized it's crap, it doesn't work. So, because when you're driving good, then you cannot make a good video. So what we're doing, we're integrating cameras to the car. We have a software which takes care of editing this whole stuff. You don't have to have the hassle of editing. And obviously, we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with a partner, with a startup here from San Francisco. And that's also a part where we learned a lot, how to work together within startup. I mean, it's totally different than work together within a big company. Yeah, and I mean, now with that, we really see that this comes to life. And to not only show you a photo here, or some photos, we also brought a video how final product could look like. Obviously, it will be a little bit longer, but right now, just in time's sake, we have a short clip out of this final product.
Very famous driver too.
Yeah, I've been a famous driver, we got something. Yeah. I mean, you see it here, that was Neuburg in Germany, and this is also the place where we're going to implement it, and towards the end of the year, we're seeing this service coming to life together with the Audi driving experience in Germany. So this is really something that feels good when you start with just a question, go through this whole process, and really see there's something coming out. Yeah.
I think that was a good final statement. I would thank you guys for the discussion, and then I would like to open it up if there are any questions in the room. Yes. You already wear the right cap.
So I'm curious if customers that you see in the car, if you're going to provide if you want to, what am I trying to say? If you were going to say recommend some sort of service to them in the vehicle, are they receptive to that? Like how they might get a service recommended to them on their phone, on their computer, or on their TV or something like that? Do they accept it the same way?
Oh, I'm happy to take that.
Yeah,
give you some feedback in terms of how and we did it. Is that I think the whole point is it's iterative and it depends on the customer segment and it depends on what you're trying to test and what the messaging and what actually is the response you want back from the customer. We did loads of things. I mean, the great thing with this was when we were doing that, My Memories, was another part of My Audi as well, where we were looking at the data layer, which was like understanding and capturing data, and then we were also looking at some stuff where how do we add that value layer back and very directly do that. We were playing with phones, we were playing with the car, we played with offline media, we played lots of different areas. I think it really came down to, we had 200 other concepts, I think, at one point. What was the actual concept we were trying to get a specific amount of feedback, and what was the right time, and doing it in a way which actually was the best value to the customer. So how do we less impose ourselves and disrupt them, more about how when they need something and at the right moment and with the right media, can we actually get that response?
And I mean, that's also what's also happening there is we saw that there's not only the one customer, like there's not only the one solution for this one customer. We have a lot of customer groups out there, a lot of different customers. They want to have different things, and we also found out that individualization is a very, very important thing. So you have to talk to the customer to find out what they want, and then also see how to really make the right offer to them. And there's not only the one customer asking the one question, and you only have this one offer in the future.
So you're trying to provide something that's going to be beneficial to them for whatever they're doing at the time.
I mean, at the end, how it will be implemented technical, this is then something the technical department will figure out, but what we are doing, we as Air at the beginning of this whole process, we figuring out what the customer wants, like experience-wise, and this is what we're trying to answer, like giving him the experience. Then obviously we have the engineers and technical guys in the background, they're figuring it out how to implement it in this car. Yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
Any more questions in the room? No, okay, I actually have a question. I have a question for you, Mark. So, because Jürgen was talking a lot about, you're smiling. No, Jürgen was talking a lot about how much fun it was working with you. Why would you actually work with Audi? Like, you were not at McKinsey, like, you were just an expert that we invited. Like, what?
So I was doing crazy startups and running around having fun in Silicon Valley and around the world. And it's not like there's a lack of ideas and interesting things out there. I think that said, I think what's going on in mobility, particularly the automotive manufacturers over the next few years, probably the next couple of decades, is the most interesting space and the most disruptive space. So I think when the first initial call came through, it's like, hey, do you want to come and help out? It's like, yeah, I'm in fascinating space. I think the game changer for me on this one was the fact that Air was actually trying to deliver something. And I think it's not like there's a lack of conversations here in the Valley about interesting things. The difference is actually how many of those interesting things actually happen. And that was the real rarity. And I think the timescale was incredibly aggressive. I was really surprised to find that OEM being that aggressive and like, no, we have to have it by then. And then there's also the combination of people. I think it's when you're trying to solve these sort of problems, it's very hard to solve it in isolation. I think it's why honestly it's a very refreshing approach to have recognizing the recognition that there's got to be multiple voices. And I think the point we were saying earlier about there are multiple audiences. There's not one right or wrong answer. So it's one of those game-changing things, really interesting people, but ultimately you're going to make something. That's really, really compelling.
Yeah, let's make something. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. And if there are no more questions in the room, I would actually close this, but I invite you to stay with me. Our next speaker is already waiting there. He's Volny, Head of Digital Business. He will talk about the digital ecosystem, which is really connected to what we're doing here. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper, just stick with us and you'll hear a bit more. Please have a warm applause and thank you guys for staying with us.